Welcome back, YouTube. We've got kind of a double video for you today. We've got a little bit of an answer video to something in the comment section that keeps coming up, and also we have a little bit of an explanation video slash an informational video about reloading in general. Some of you might be reloaders. Some of you might be thinking about becoming reloaders. Some of you already tried it, been there, done it, done with it. Other people are very heavy critics of it. Some people just don't understand it. So this video should help a few people understand reloading slash hand loading a little bit better. I can't show you any of the processes because that's not allowed on this platform. It's their house, their rules. I have to play by them. But I can show you some tools and some information is what I can show you. I just can't show you the technique or the process. But with that said, let's get into this a little bit. So, did the reloads hurt my Springfield XDM 3.8 inch 10 millimeter? Is that why it went back to the factory? In the comment section, a couple people had mentioned something about reloads. I'll try to put one up here that I know about for sure. But everybody always wants to blame Bubba. I don't know what Bubba ever did in life so bad that he gets blamed for every bad reload that's ever blown up a gun, but people always talk about Bubba's reloads. What are Bubba's reloads? Bubba's reloads are when you go to the flea market and there's some guy down there at some booth at the end and he's selling brightly colored packages and he's got a sign up that says ammo in the middle of this crisis that we have going on, and he's selling cast bullets that he's jammed into every kind of weird case you can find, and there's nothing written on the package except for 45 ACP. And he's got some weird price that might be a few dollars less than what you might find at the store, and you think it's a good deal, and if you ask him anything about the bullets, he can't tell you much about them other than they're bullets. Those are Bubba reloads. I wouldn't trust that. You don't know who those are, you don't know what those are, you don't know who made them, you don't know what went into them. You have no idea what the guy's mental state was when he was making them. You have no idea if he was distracted. You have no idea what kind of components he used. You have no idea what kind of information he used. You don't know anything about it. That's dangerous territory. Just going and buying random reloads from people, I don't recommend that. But as far as hand loads that you're making yourself and reloads that you're making yourself, and there is a difference. Hand loads you make by taking the components, usually new components, and you put them together and you make a hand-loaded bullet. Reloads, you would be taking the same kind of components except for you're recycling a portion of those components, usually the brass casing. You clean it up, you do a few things to get it back to perfect form, and then you're able to reload a bullet. So there is a difference, and some people will argue about the quality between the two. And if you have certain firearms that will damage your brass, then of course a reloaded brass case might not be as quality as a new brass case. However, the work that goes into both of them are equally the same, if not definitely sometimes more, with the reloads, because you have to do so much more case prep. And as you're doing this case prep and as you're putting these components together, you're learning and you're constantly checking if you're doing things right. But you're constantly learning, you're constantly researching, and you're constantly teaching yourself about the process. You learn what the factory does. You learn what the factory gets right and what they get wrong. You learn what you get right and what you get wrong. And if you're careful, nothing goes wrong. If you learn and you're taking notes and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, things go extremely right, and you end up with a better product sometimes than what the factory can give you. I make many bullets. I make everything from cheap range ammo to, just things that I can play with, cheap range ammo that I don't really control the parameters of too much to get it down to be custom ammo. But then I do make stuff all the way up to what I consider very kind of custom target type of ammo. Especially when you get into rifle ammo, you can just start chucking bullets out and they'll just be rifle rounds, and they fly at a certain velocity, they maintain a certain accuracy up until a certain distance. Bullets are bullets kind of when it comes to that. However, if you want precision, there's a lot of different things that go into getting precision. There's different types of components, completely different world and when it comes to expense and process to do it, but you can tone or hone these bullets down. You can tone them down nice and light, you can ram them up really super hot. Somewhere in between, you end up finding a sweet spot. For precision rifle shooting, you can make bullets that just give you pinpoint accuracy over and over again, where you can't necessarily get that from the factory from lot to lot. You might dial in one lot of ammunition, get it perfect, you shoot it for a while, then you end up with another lot because you bought another case of ammo and you got to go through the whole process of re-zeroing again. When you control the parameters, it might be a little different. We check our ammo constantly with chronographs, with gel tests. We're in the books all the time looking at different things. We're talking to each other. We're in groups. We're in forums. So Bubba might reload bullets one way, but a serious hand loader or reloader, they do it the right way. And we're highly intelligent people in this game. We might not, be intelligent in other fields sometimes, but when we get into reloading, a lot of us, we get into it. It's a zone that we get into. And it's actually really insulting when people refer to every reloader or hand loader as a Bubba. And when they look at every reloaded bullet and they say, oh, that's just a junk reload. No, they're not all the same. Some of them are, by far, definitely. And I have plenty of examples I could show you. However, a lot of us that take it seriously, we spend a lot more money than we need to. Sometimes cost per round, we're spending well over what we would pay for factory ammunition just so that we have the ultimate control, so that we know what we did is perfect. They want to talk about quality and the factory, you can only trust factory ammunition. They say especially for defensive ammunition, and that's an argument that can be made. Okay, but keep in mind, you're risking your life sometimes. Let's just forget about the target stuff for a minute. If you're going to go ahead and buy defensive ammunition like we always do, we have to trust that factory. We have to trust that all those components were sourced from good places, that the primers work properly, and so they go through their manufacturing and quality control. But what if someone was hungover on the line? What if someone's actually high or drunk on the line? What if someone just hates their job and hates life in general, and they just say, screw it today. I don't care about quality control on the critical defense line or the HST line or the gold dot line. What if the computer malfunctions? They're checking, scanning with lasers. What if something goes wrong? So quality control issues can, come through. I've seen factory target, at least target ammunition. I can't remember defensive ammunition, but I've seen target ammunition from Federal or Winchester, one of the bigger companies, with backwards primers, multiples in the same box. How did that get through a computer with a laser scanner? It did. That went past human eyes or a computer with a scanner and a laser somehow. So that was factory ammunition. I personally bought a box of Zombie Max one time because it was a good price. It was at Cabela's or something. And I thought, hey, that looked cool. It's basically critical defense, but loaded with a green tip for zombies. It was laying around for so long that I said, I better take this out and shoot it. I'm not ever going to use it for anything. So I was playing around seeing the ballistics of the critical defense round. Well, the first round that I shot lobbed out of the barrel like a marble shooter. It just, the next one hit the backstop and bounced back. They were underloaded. There was barely any powder in there. I'm surprised they didn't, create a squib load. And that was a supposed defensive ammunition that was from Hornady. We've all heard about light primer strikes. We've all heard about complete failure to ignites. We can control our ammo. We know what goes into it. If we're watching it, if we're hand loading it, hand making it, we can control every single element that goes into that bullet. We can go as far as to primer seal and bullet seal for long-term storage better than a factory sometimes does it. We can make that ammo waterproof. Long-term storage, not a problem. Then we vacuum seal it, put it away, and that ammo lasts forever. There's steps that we can take as we're making the ammo to just constantly increase its accuracy and its reliability. For example, when I start making bullets, I start testing. I start testing how they, perform at the exact same distance, the exact same parameters, and I start seeing accuracy. And you're going to see wild differences in accuracy in some of these. Here's one of my favorite ones. I was using Hornady XTPs here, I was using XTPs here, and I was using some DG bullets, and I was using some Bayou bullets. Now, I've complained about the Bayou bullets before. That's these things. That's these red-coated, whatever you call it, kind of coating, high-tech coating. They're just, I have to resize them. They're a pain in the butt to reload, but surprisingly, my groups, this is 21 shots at 21 feet with my 1911 R1, a rattly 1911. That was the best group of all these bullets. So I learned. I used a certain amount of powder, that I wrote. I used tight group, and I used a certain amount of powder with that 230 grain bullet, and I produced that. So guess what? I have a couple thousand of those laying around. That's a really good target load. I know that when I load those up that exact same way with that exact same primer and do everything exactly the same with measurement, I get a very accurate bullet, but I can whoop people's butt when we're doing target practice. So that's how we do things. We're very careful. We're very methodical. So the truth is that if you're very careful and you're methodical and you check your processes over and over again, you can make a great product, you can have a lot of fun, and you can learn. By learning to load your own ammunition, you learn so much about ammunition in general. You just learn. I can't explain it. You just start to understand things. Everything opens up to you. You start to understand ballistics. You start to understand pressures. You understand what goes on in the firing sequence and why things happen with bullets when they hit things at certain speeds and what type of bullets do certain things. You understand why certain calibers just don't work well. You understand why certain calibers have the recoil that they have. You understand how to tame down some of those calibers. If you have a 44 Magnum and you like to shoot it, but it beats your butt all the time when you shoot it, well, make some 44 Special. If you don't have 44 Special brass, trust me, there's a recipe out there to take your 44 Magnum brass and just load it like a 44 Special and go have fun with that Ruger Red Hawk or whatever you have. I have a Model 69 Combat Magnum. I shoot everything from hammer down, 240 grain, 250 grain nasty stuff that'll about blow your wrist apart, or I can shoot 44 Special in it, and I can load those type of ranges all by myself. Like I said, it can be really fun. I don't recommend you put the TV on and watch Game of Thrones and then put your baseball team on and start getting mad and pounding the table as you're making ammunition. You kind of do need to be focused in. But I do put on a little bit of music here in the background, or the news in the background, but I maintain focusing on what I'm doing. That's me personally. I'm able to do it like that. It's not good to have distractions, but it's a great hobby. And I'll tell you what, in my opinion, it's a good idea to learn reloading because sometimes it's just necessary. We just learned how much you can't find things. You really need to be able to be self-sufficient. I'm not going to take a dig here, but I'm going to just say, like, you know, people who consider themselves prepared should actually be prepared. What are you going to do when the supply line stops and you can't get a hold of things? You should probably learn how to stock up on a few things. Get yourself a jar of powder. Get yourself a handful of projectiles and some cases, and be able to do this yourself. You can make black powder if you have to, if you have the components, but learn how to be self-sufficient. We talked about how sometimes the quality control on the line might be dependent on some guy who had a bad day at work the previous day and didn't want to come in today. Maybe he's hungover or whatever. When you go and you buy a box of factory ammunition, if you go trust SIG, you're trusting their machines and you're trusting their quality control with their people on the line making it. You're trusting your life to them. When you make your own ammunition, you trust your life to you. You take that responsibility. I'm not suggesting you use reloads. Some people do, some people don't. You can, you might not want to. I'm not, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Who can I actually trust more? Can I trust this company? Or can I trust something I've made myself? Also with reloading, sometimes you have to spend more money than you typically would to go ahead and buy it from the store, but also sometimes you can do it on the cheap. And you can also save some money if you figure out the right powder combinations. Tight group is a great one. They make tight wad for shotguns, they make tight group, but tight group, you barely have to use any powder. Cost effective wise, great powder to use. I can use minimal grains to make bullets for practice and going to class and just target shooting, let the kids shoot, whatever. That goes a long way. A pound of that, I make more than 1,000 rounds with that sometimes, with just a pound. So I can save money doing this when I want to, and that equals more training. That equals more classes that I'm able to go to. That gets the kids out there shooting more. We all know that as long as you're doing it right, more training just reinforces your good skills. Another thing people fail to really realize is that they'll pick on the hand loader, but then they go buy ammunition from a boutique ammo company, one of the not so bigger companies, but they have their favorites. I won't mention any names. But sometimes that ammo is run on big computerized machines, but a lot of time that ammo is not. Those ammo is done in small batches on progressive machines. They might be automated, but it's by one person and one machine, and it's up to them to make your defensive ammunition. So you like your blah 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 company, blah 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 plus P plus blah 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 bullet, and that one guy and that one machine sit there and they make a lot of that ammunition. Like a lot, like one lot, one LOT. And they put it on a pallet, they seal it up, it goes. Then he switches out all the tooling, or switches out all the pieces, components, and he makes the next caliber. They tell him to go ahead and, all right, now work on 38 Super. So he switches out from 357 SIG to 38 Super, and there he goes. His job is to make a pallet of the next one. They're basically hand loaders, and you're just paying them for hand-loaded ammunition. That's all. I think it's Hornady. Don't completely quote me on that, but I think that Hornady has, at least they used to before the ammo crisis stuff happened, you could go to their website and they had a custom ammo building setup where you told them everything you wanted specification wise. I think you could pretty much tell them grain, weight, and type of bullet and everything, and they would make you custom ammunition. You had to order a minimal amount, and trust me, it was coming out to like $8 a round, I think, $5 or $8 a round. It was insane. You could buy BMG ammo for cheaper. But that's what people were wanting when they wanted absolute dialed in hunting ammo or whatever ammo. And they paid huge dollars for someone in Hornady to hand load them ammo. Another interesting fact, you can go watch a video about Wilson Combat 1911s and the quality control process that they go through. One of the quality control processes when they're shooting at the end after the gun's been built and they're quality testing it is shooting reloads, house-made reloads. Go figure, Wilson Combat putting reloads through one of their really nice 1911s. Sometimes also you have a specific firearm that requires a specifically tuned bullet. You can't just go to the factory ammo all the time and get a round that works just perfectly with your firearm. Especially now, you can barely get the ammo you want ever. You're lucky to get any caliber you want sometimes. But you can take a round and you can work with it. And for your specific firearm, we're not talking about just making quality ammunition. Now we're talking about fine-tuning a round to your firearm. Through testing and testing and testing and playing around and getting different components and working with it, you can tune the bullets to your specific firearm. Let's say you have a finicky 1911. I have one. I can make ammunition that actually works better than MagTech. So I have factory MagTech ammunition right here that will not feed in my 1911. Just goes bonkers in there, jams it up all the time. But I made these to the perfect overall length for my 1911, and they work. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Trust me, your serious bench rest shooters, your guys that are down with competition, and they're talking about serious precision rifle bench rest shooting, they're reloading their ammunition. They're not Bubba. They've got this dialed down to a science, and trust me, they're incredibly accurate. They shoot long range distances, and they have groups like that. The hole and hole and hole, and they make their own ammunition because they've dialed it in so perfectly. They can't buy ammunition like that for their rifle from the gun shop. They can't get it from a factory. It just won't work out like that. And again, like I said, reloaders have testing equipment. We test these things all the time. So one of the things we test is velocity all the time. So with our specific firearm, the box says one thing, but we know that they use their barrels, their 6-inch and 10-inch barrels when they talk about some of these rounds going certain feet per second. But you can actually test it with your firearm, whether you make it or even if you're buying factory ammunition and you just have the ballistics gel and the chronograph laying around because you're already that methodical of a tester and a reloader anyway. You know exactly how your bullet performs out of your firearm. Not only how it performs coming out of here, but how it performs when it hits something down there. So keep an open mind and remember that all bullets can fail, whether they're made at the factory or whether you make them. I can set a backwards primer, so can Federal. The dinged up brass, sure. I can get some dinged up or some, not so good looking brass every now and then. I'll cast out the ones that don't look great, but if I know it'll function, and trust me, it's easy to tell which ones will function. They don't have to look beautiful. But as far as ugly looking brass sometimes, what do you think we get from Lake City with an M80 ball? What do you think we get with the M855 from Lake City? Those are sometimes, a lot of those are overcast or chucked over the side military contract stuff. We get the ones that don't pass the perfect little laser inspection as it goes by. And one thing before we move on to me showing you some of our equipment, I want to address, people say, oh, what about overloads or double loads or triple loads? Well, sure, that can happen if you screw up. But if you maintain a process and you have checks in place, those shouldn't happen. And keep in mind, a little bit of an overload, when we talk about redlining cartridges, sometimes people get a little weird about that. Like, oh, what's redlining mean? You're taking it too far. No, redlining just means that's where the book says to stop. You can go a little past redline if you're developing the load properly. Some guns can handle it. They're never going to give you a load that's right at the edge just in case a little extra powder slips in there, or just in case you use a Magnum primer and it increases ignition by whatever percent. or just in case you accidentally put the wrong weighted bullet in there, they don't want a physics reaction that they didn't intend and blows your gun up. Now the truth is that most modern firearms, if not all, they're proof load tested. So especially the bigger guns, the rifles, I mean, they're giving 30% increase to maximum pressures to proof test these sometimes. So trust me, they've run overloaded ammunition through your gun before it left the factory just to make sure it's not going to blow up with a little bit of an extra grain weight here and there. So a properly made and a properly tested and a properly QC'd firearm should never experience a failure just because of a little bit of a bump up past redline. So reloaders go through a lot to select the proper powders. We spend a lot of money, we do a lot of research, and we buy expensive proper powders. We use components like this, just like any of the bullets that you get from CCI Spear. These are the primers that they're using, quality components. Sometimes we wash our brass, clean our brass, and reuse our brass. We inspect it, we make sure that it's great. Sometimes we buy brand new brass. New, unfired, unprimed brass. So, sometimes we have new components, quality bullets, new components. That looks like a new component. And we take all those new components and we get a book like this and we start getting recipes out of it. There, 38 Super. So we learn what powders to use. Here, let's go to 38 Special. Here's all the different powders that I can use in here. So tight group. It's not that hard. We match up grain weight to bullet weight and we come up with recipes. We take it outside, we check our velocity, we check for signs of overpressure. When we get to the red line, we start definitely checking for signs of overpressure or anything like that. We try not to go beyond that unless we really know what we're doing. But all these different powders here, if you read, a lot of times here, they'll explain to you what they've got for their most accurate loads. They'll give you a lot of information. This is like a Bible to us. So, yeah, 40 Smith & Wesson, I've got this marked because I was just making it. Now, on top of that, I've got these books going all the way back to where I found this one pretty good at a bookstore, but all the way back for Hornady to the second version, or the second printing. We're up to the 11th edition, volume 2. So I've even got old stuff. I've got cartridges that they've taken out of the new books, but I've got all the information. If I come across the old powders, the old projectiles, I've got them. These are our Bibles. We're not stupid. Like I said, quality. Nothing about this is cheap. I mean, you can get cheap, but I'm saying we use quality products. So this doesn't look like anything Bubba would be handling. Sorry, Bubba. So usually, depending on how we're doing it, we'll either do it on the progressive or we can just do it one by one. Here's 44 Magnum I was working on. We clean the cases. We put them in here, and now I know I can go one by one and we can do the whole process. I'll run them through the machine and I'll deprime them. We'll pop the primer out, and then we'll go to the case prep tool. I can either clean the primers like this with this thing, or I can retumble them again. That's kind of a pain in the butt. The walnut gets stuck. But anyway, there's a tool here that we use to prep rifle brass, pistol brass. That's an expensive little booger, and that's not even one of the better ones. But after that, we can run it through, and we use powder measures. Again, this isn't the super expensive stuff, but this is just the basics. We can use powder measures. We better use powder measures, or we can use drops if we're using the progressive. We can go as far as to a little trickler. Now, there's all kinds of different machines, but this just shows a basic. We can sit here and turn this little knob, and we can trickle grain by grain and get exactly what we want, and then put a little funnel, or do it by hand here. Fill up our rounds. We can take a look down in there and inspect every single one of them. And then we can reload nice new projectiles into these things. Set them in there, set them in the machine, crimp them down exactly how we want them, to the exact depth we want them. And it all works out. Now, also along the way, we're doing a lot of checking. I spend a lot of money on what's called chamber checkers. So any bullet that goes through my gun that I've remade goes through a chamber checker. So see how that fell in there? It's in there nice and even, flat, and it falls right out. That bullet's good to go. That one didn't make it so easy. So there's something a little bit wrong. This one has to go through and just get repressed one more time, or we'll take it apart. Now, if we wanted to, we do know that I could squeeze it down. But is it ideal? No, it's not ideal, and I know that because the gauge says so. So we measure our bullets. We measure our cases. We spend a lot of money and a lot of time making sure that things go right. I always keep factory bullets, so I keep a SIG around here. I can't get this camera to focus for anything, but this is a SIG. I keep a SIG around for my 10mm. Because SIG is one of the best ammos that I've ever run through any of my 10mm ever, and I want to mimic that bullet. So when I'm making my bullets, I make them mimic a SIG. So I always have factory ammo that I love around to just make sure it's consistent. Here's an example of some rifle ammunition I made. So this is boat tail hollow point, and trust me, after I've gone through everything I go through to case prep these and use the right components and bench rest primers and the right powder and the right projectile, quality components and quality time spent with this, doing it right, I get a better group out of this at 100 yards than I get out of most of my hunting ammunition. I get 1-inch groups with this out of an AR-10, out of a CMMG Mark III. It's pretty awesome, and that's not really trying that hard. Here's some 44 Magnum ammunition that I've just made, and you can see I've labeled the primers, because what I'm doing with this is I'm going to take it out and I'm going to velocity test it. I'm going to find out exactly what I like, what the sweet spot is for a new powder that I'm using. So 9 rounds of each. I just didn't have a 10th just because I didn't have the cases prepped, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to do testing. There's my information. There's my information. I don't know. This doesn't look very Bubba to me. Here's another trick. So as far as using chamber checkers like this or like this, how about the ultimate chamber checker? Your barrel. So if I need to make sure that every single round that I made is going to feed into this firearm, at least fit into it properly, I can take my barrel and I can actually put each round in there and make sure it's going to work. So, ultimate control. Again, that's quality. So, other than new components sometimes, is there really a difference between that and that? That one says new. That one says reman. They both run fine on my firearm. This is SIG, fancier. This is Underwood. I love this stuff. Sitting right next to one of my hand loads. Would I trust this hand load? Absolutely. Would I trust this Underwood? Absolutely. What are in my firearms? Both of them. So I guess the bottom line is here. You could be a total idiot and you could blow your handgun up, or you could blow your hands off, or you could hurt other people if you chose to. If you choose to do it right, you can also make a great quality product that you can trust your life on. You can use for practice. You can save money. You can make for high accuracy. You can have a lot of fun. You can learn a lot. I hope I've showed you just a little bit of it. I can go on for hours and hours showing you, the kind of processes we do without actually showing you. I can almost show you, and I can show you products day in and day out. But the bottom line is that if you want to get into reloading, get into it. It's great. It is expensive right now, and you got to do your research to find out how to do it affordably. But actually, right now, as we speak, the machinery and the shell plates and a lot of the different tools that you need, they're actually available at a reasonable price. Those, for the most part, have caught up. The components are still a little bit shaky. The bullets are still pricey. The primers are absolutely ridiculous. The brass kind of came down to very reasonable level, plus range brass. You can always source your own brass. But it's getting projectiles at a reasonable price and getting primers and powders. Powders are hit or miss. By me and online, from what I see, they're just hit or miss. You just have to keep your eye out. They're still more expensive than they used to be, but they're still available. I encourage everybody to learn how to reload if it's something that interests you. If you don't want anything to do with it, fine, don't have anything to do with it. I can totally understand and I can totally respect that. It's not for everybody. It can be dangerous if you don't do it right. But the one thing that I want to put to rest, I know it's never going to put it to rest because people are just going to always say what they're going to say. Stop knocking every single reloader and every single hand loader and treating us all, lumping us all into a category of just stupid people making bullets that blow up our own guns and leaving comments in the comment section like, oh, what do you expect with a Bubba reload? None of my bullets were Bubba reloads that I shot through that firearm. That XDM failed shooting modern ammunition, just shooting target. Any of the ammo that I made, none of it exceeded anything that Buffalo Bore Double Tap or Corbon hasn't already done. So I don't go under velocity very often. I'll do it with 45 ACP just to get it nice soft, like 700 FPS rounds that are just lobbing down there just for fun. But with everything else, I keep it within the parameters. I try not to go above red line unless I really know data that works that I've tested with my firearm. But I didn't do that with this firearm. That 10mm, I don't know what stopped it. I didn't put enough rounds through it. That gun didn't have thousands and thousands of rounds through it. And hey, you know what? If 200 of my reloads was enough to kill it, my reloads that were within parameter, my reloads that were within the spec of something like Underwood, if that was enough to kill it, then I don't want anything to do with that firearm. And that firearm, in my opinion, is a piece of junk. I didn't do anything to that. Some people have mentioned, oh, you shot the 40 caliber through it, and the 40 caliber wrecked the internals of the trigger, the blah, 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 and they use a bunch of big words that I don't even care to look up. But shooting the 40 caliber is like shooting a baby through there. Nothing. That's like 38 to 357. And I know before people jump in the comment section about axial displacement was the latest one I heard. Okay, fine, but trust me, people run 40 caliber through 10mm all the time, and I didn't run that much through it. As far as shooting the backwards bullets, understand how a barrel works and understand how the grooving engages and all that other stuff. Understand what a wad cutter is. A wad cutter is a flat-faced bullet that just plows into the rifling, and they're actually very accurate sometimes. They're actually, used in police guns back in the day in the 38 Specials. They use semi-wad cutters and wad cutters all the time to tear people up. The bottom line is that doesn't hurt the gun at all. There's no excess back pressure. I loaded those light. When I shot the 357 SIG through there, that was actually super light pressure. That wasn't anything terrible on the extractor. And when the mouth of the case opens up, it loses all of its power. We saw that. That didn't do anything terrible to this firearm. So nothing I did should have actually destroyed it. It's a malfunction in the gun. The quality control of it, the workmanship, materials, in my opinion. We'll find out. It's not back yet. But it wasn't a Bubba reload that killed that firearm. I can promise you that. That's just ridiculous. I've never had a primer back out. I've never had a bullet explode. I've never had a case explosion. I've never had a squib load. I've never had a true double charge that I know of ever like that. I've had some hot rounds. I've had powder in different temperatures get hotter and fierier, but I've never overloaded or failed to load. I check everything methodically with my eye and with something called the powder cop. Look it up. It checks the powder. I go through a very methodical process all the time, and I come out with good results. So again, I encourage you to find out about reloading and see if you want to do it, but at least accept reloaders. Don't knock on us all the time just because we're reloaders or hand loaders. We make a pretty awesome product, a lot of times better than the factory. So not the most exciting video, but I think it needed some explanation. You could really help by sharing this video around. Anybody who wants to knock on reloaders that you know of, or anybody who's on the fence about wanting to reload, share this video. Let people know what we do, that we're not all a bunch of idiots. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you are subscribed, make sure you hit the notification bell. That way you get our videos as soon as they come down and you don't miss any of them. If you like what we do here at The Turkey's Opinion, please consider supporting us directly on Patreon. We're over there. In the meantime, stay safe, have fun, keep shooting. See you next time.